India is listening to a lot of music, right? So I think this year the consumption has, sort of gone up many, many fold. And I'm not talking the overall consumption, I'm talking consumption per user. Which is like, even happier news, because it really means that you are giving the user more moments to stream, and then per moment there is more consumption. So we do see an uptake of more audio being consumed this year, which is great.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast. We are recording this episode in the first week of December 2022. Last week, I spent a few days at the Spotify India office, and I gotta tell you that the energy and the vibe there was very infectious, especially as it is Wrapped season at Spotify. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, Wrapped is the year-end campaign from Spotify, where they tell you on the app what all you listened to this year, who did you listen to the most, and what were some of the unique listening behaviors of yours, so on and so forth. I find this always extremely fascinating, both as a creator as well as a listener. So I thought I will bottle a little bit of that vibe for you in this episode, where I speak to Neha Ahuja, the head of marketing at Spotify. Neha is a seasoned digital marketer who's been in leadership roles across brands like Procter & Gamble, Vodafone, and now Spotify. I spoke to Neha about what India listened to this year on Spotify, what user behaviors she's seeing from her vantage point, who are the artists we listen to the most, and more importantly, how did people listen to podcasts this year? I also spoke to Neha about Spotify is no more just a platform brand, but a flag bearer for many subcultures. Stay with us, we'll be right back on the Filter Koffee Podcast. Welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast, Neha. How are you doing?
Super. Really happy to be here.
Excellent. Are you talking to us from Bombay?
Yes. It's the hot December Bombay.
Yeah. No, I was going to give as a background to the audience that I had the opportunity to finally come down to the extraordinary Spotify office and spend a couple of evenings there, and most of it, on the sidelines of Wrapped and everything that's happening with Spotify. I can't help but notice that there is this amazing energy, right? Like. There's something very important in pop culture going on, inside those walls. And,
Yeah.
I just thought I'd love to talk to you about it and decode it from an insider's perspective.
Yeah, so yes, it is a really cool office, and we hear that very often. It is also, like you mentioned, Karthik, it's just the vibe, right? There is just so much energy around it. I think another thing that also helps is that we also have a lot of, creators and artists and, music launches happening in office. So sort of,
Wow.
that builds the vibe, and that, they leave a part of their self in the office, so that also builds the energy of the office.
Wow. Tell us a
Yeah.
bit about that. How often does that happen? When I came, I saw a young and emerging artist, and it was a great gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But how often do you guys have artists over?
It's becoming a little bit of phenomenon now that a lot of artists are actually releasing their music from our office, from the stage of our office. So we recently had Arman Malik release his singles album from our office. So that was great fun. But other than that, we have a lot of podcasters who come, a lot of creators who come, a lot of radar artists, whom we feel, sort of deserve that kind of audience and attention, also sort of grace the office. So a lot of energy through the year.
It'll be interesting to, probably spend a couple of minutes on, for the uninitiated, on what you just mentioned, which is the radar artists. It's a
Yeah.
Spotify initiative, right?
Yeah.
Okay. For those who don't know about it, can you tell them a little bit about it?
I think so Radar is a global initiative, basically, where, we kind of spot and promote the young budding independent artists and help them sort of launch their music. There's also a little bit of guidance provided on how they can, promote their music beyond the app. So guidance on how, sort of promotion can be done of the music is also done. for these radar
It's
artists.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. So in a way,
And it's a global program, and I mean, it's
right.
sometimes it's just so satisfying to see that these radar artists, because of the global footprint that Spotify has, actually reach audience that are beyond the geographies of India. So you will see a radar artist being heard outside India as well.
It's such an evolution, isn't it? I'm just thinking that I'm a '90s kid, and back then, if you're an independent musician, you can only be spotted in a gig, right? And in some club somewhere in the corner of a city where you're playing. And of course, the other end of the spectrum was for them to sort of break into MTV and have a music video or something like that, right?
Right.
But I think what you're doing with Radar and programs like that has completely changed the landscape of the independent musician, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know. To
Yes.
me, it seems like it's much more a viable career today than it was even 5, 6 years back.
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
you
I
feel?
think definitely, sort of democratizing the whole ecosystem a little bit, because you have the opportunity to directly connect with the fans and go beyond the
Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah, and with the support of a platform like Spotify, that's just amazing. Another thing that is amazing is, of course, what rap has become, and I think everybody's Insta, and for that matter, all social feeds was completely taken over by that. I think it still is being, and what a lovely story it is, isn't it? Like to be able to know how you are consumed, how the content that you created has been consumed, how audience engaged with you, which is purely an Excel sheet thing, but you
Yeah,
made this into an expression, right,
yeah.
for an artist, right, every year. Tell us about how rap is evolved over the years here.
Yeah, so I think like you mentioned, Karthik, we also believe that it's really become that cultural moment, right? It has become that annual marketing moment, and while globally, this is the eighth year of Wrapped. In India, this is the fourth year of Spotify Wrapped, and I think what was really, really encouraging is that even before we started talking about Wrapped, there was just so much of conversation around, how the Wrapped will look like this year for the users. There was so much of anticipation around it, right? And there were really funny memes around it even before we started talking about the Wrapped 2022. So it's really become that cultural moment. I do
Yeah.
agree, but having said that, I often tell this to my team that Wrapped is a lazy marketeers initiative. And why I say that is that I think this is one of the initiatives or campaigns where we as the marketing team really work the least. It is the rest of the world, the
Yeah.
rest of the the ecosystem that's really doing all the heavy lifting for us. And I mean, I'm sure you would have experienced that, right? That, I mean, you open your Insta or your Twitter, you will see users, you will see artists, creators. And this year, I think there was just an overwhelming response from the brands who had just
Hmm.
sort of participated in how their rap looks like, and they had followed the brand template. So there is just so much force around it that helps build that cultural moment. But I think there are a few things that we've done right to sort of
Hmm.
make this happen. One of them being that I think consistency was key here.
Hmm.
We've done this for 8 years, and I think what has also worked is that we've maintained that franchise. So it was
Hmm.
called the Spotify Wrapped in 2016, and it's called the Spotify Wrapped in 2022. So we've held on to that franchise and sort of build that in. Also, what it stands for is sort of very true and rooted into the look back culture. It's very rooted in how you have consumed audio, but we've just sort of tried to build on to the experiences a little bit more. So the foundation has remained the same, the experience of the user, which is very deep rooted in, like I said, the look back culture is important and has been consistent. Another thing that you mentioned, right, is it's always fun to sort of look back how your year was. It's always fun, right? I mean, we look at our photographs and sort of, that does bring a smile to our face. So I think it's also very deep rooted in human psychology. It's always
Hmm.
fun to see, hey, what we did through the year. And there are always surprises. Hey, did I really listen to this artist so much? Or, I expected this artist or this genre to be on my rad, but maybe not. So all of that is fun as well. And I think lastly, it's also about the personalization at scale that we manage
Mm.
through this. There are about 450 million users Spotify globally, right? And each one of the qualified user will get a wrapped card on their app, and no two wrapped cards will look alike. And I think
Yeah.
that's the real fun, right? That you and I might feel that, hey, we consume similar music, but our rap cards will look totally, totally different. So I think all
Yeah.
these things do make it a lot of fun and make it a real cultural moment for all of
I
us.
think, you mentioned consistency. And for me, even before Spotify was officially launched in India, those painful years when you knew this existed outside and you couldn't do this in India without a VPN. That time, every time I visited a city like London, I'll see these extraordinary billboards,
Yeah,
Spotify billboards, which will all be a very data driven sort of a copy, right?
yeah,
Like I remember once there was this, hey, person who listened to this very dark Eminem song like 75 times every day. I hope everything's okay with you.
yeah,
Stuff like that. It's very quirky, very data driven sort of a thing. And in a way, it was a lot of what Spotify does, including rap, is in that domain, right? You
yeah,
made
yeah.
data and measurement a lot of fun, and it's almost become the core of your communication, isn't it? Which of course is a alibi, it's a surrogate for personalization, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Wrapped is a campaign which is purely data based, right? I mean,
Yeah.
whatever we celebrate is really deep rooted into the data. Whether it's personalized data that each user sort of gets an experience of in app, or then we also sort of go out and announce the top song, the top genres, the top artists. But everything is just data driven. It's algorithmic.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also, while Wrapped is all about our individual preferences and how we sort of consume content, some of which I think is a bit of news to us as
Yeah,
well, isn't it? Like last year, I think there was one of the things in the slideshow was something about me listening to Blackstrat Blues and
hmm.
Rihanna back to back. And the reason for that is I have a 5-year-old daughter, and every time I finish listening to a song, she'll be like, "I also want to listen. I have to play a song that she loves, right?" And she loves
Yeah,
Umbrella. So it picks up those quirks that you're the only person who listens to these two people back to back in the entire
yeah.
country or something like that.
Yeah. On that, actually, the
Mm.
one of the fun things is that this year our theme really for Wrapped is unapologetically joyful. So you really don't have to explain why you have those two songs back to back. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
can I can have Preetham and Harry Styles back to back, right? I don't have to explain, and a lot of people have this, right? So I mean, they will have soft rock, and then could be devotional, or soft rock and then sort of desi pop back to back. And we see a lot of that, and I think that's what the year 22 celebrates. It's really about
Mm.
that unapologetically joyful streaming behavior.
Talking about year 22, I'm also extraordinarily, jealous of you good folks at Spotify, because you get to see how and what India is listening to as a dashboard every year. But, over the last couple of years, right, you must have seen this is also the time of the year when you sort of look at what has trended in the country, which musicians have surprised everyone, and all of that, right? What are some of the data points that you see which you find interesting? Not just this year, but over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
In a way, what I'm asking you is what is India listening to for those of
Yeah.
us outside that wonderful office?
Sure. So I think one of the things, Karthik, that we're really happy to share is that India is listening to a lot of music, right? So I
Excellent.
think this year the consumption has, sort of gone up many, many fold. And I'm not talking the overall consumption, I'm talking consumption per user, which is
Hmm.
which is like, even happier news, because I mean, it really means that you are giving the user more moments to stream, and then per moment there is more consumption. So we do see an uptake of more audio being consumed this year, which is great. And I think one of the
Hmm.
things that has happened is that while what we saw in the last couple of years was the typical use cases of driving, workout, gym, and just the
Yeah.
weekend, peaks had changed a little bit because of work from home and, a different kind of routine. Now we see that there is everything. So the typical use cases exist, but there is also so much more through the day that's happening. So
Hmm.
there are newer moments, but there are also the driving and the workouts in the morning and the weekend peaks that sort of maintain and have gone up. So definitely
Some of
more
these things that
consumption.
peaked during the pandemic, you're saying, has not gone down after
Has
we've
not
opened up.
gone down, but what has come back is the usual the use cases or the moments, which is
Hmm.
the driving, the streaming during the drive, or sort of streaming during your morning run is back as well.
You sort of differentiate this by how Spotify is played at those
And the
times.
time
Like,
of the day. So we, as a streaming app, we are able to see that there are peaks during
right.
the day of the time, right? So now we see that yes, those peaks exist, but there is also enough and more consumption that happens just during the day. So there is a lot of 12 to 2 p.m. There is also a lot of 4 to 6 that happens. So a lot of chilling around that time as well. And I think talking about what they are chilling with. I think another happy news there is that the music in India was very sort of focused around film music. And I'm not only
Hmm.
talking, the Hindi market or the Bollywood market, but throughout the country, there was a lot of film music being consumed. But if you see the top 5 songs in India this
Hmm.
year, as per Wrapped, 4 out of those 5 songs are non-filmy songs, right? So there is Excuses, there is Pasuri, there is No Love, there is
Excuses
Chand
is AP
is a
Dilon.
Punjabi song, right? Pasuri is a Punjabi Urdu song, not even a India origin song. No Love is a Punjabi song. Chand Balia at number 5 is an independent artist song, again non-filmy. There is just one filmy song, which is Kesaria, which actually broke all records, which is at number 3. But I think this is something very different that we've seen this year, that there is so much of independent music in the top 5 songs, and I think that's great news, right? I mean, finally independent artists are sort of being discovered and they are being consumed so much more. And it's not even Hindi. It's not even Hindi, right? I mean, like you said, there is Excuses and there is Nola, which is Punjabi music.
Yeah. Is this a trend you're seeing across other languages? For example, do you see independent artists sort of coming up in South and the Eastern languages as well?
Yeah, see, Punjabi, they were always independent artists. We see a lot
Yeah.
of this coming in Hindi. But yeah, I think a lot of this is happening in South as well. I think one of the top songs was by Anirudh. So he's also one of the top artists this year again. So we see that trend emerging across.
As a marketer, I'm always focused on some of the demographics, right? Because it tells us a lot more about the industry. Is consumption of music going beyond the urban centers, which are very, very predictable for an app like Spotify? Do you see a lot of traction in tier 2, tier 3, possibly in rural India as well?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say rural India at this stage, Karthik, but
Hmm.
Spotify right now is sort of being consumed in about 8,000 cities, right? So we are way beyond tier 1 and tier 2 right now. Yeah. So, and I think again, just to sort of call out that it's not really international music that's being consumed. There is a
Hmm.
lot of Hindi, there is a lot of Tamil, Telugu. I mean, we have Bhojpuri and Haryanavi being consumed on our app. We have editorial playlists that are being curated by Spotify in Bhojpuri and Haryanvi, because we're seeing that kind of traction. So yeah, I mean, of course there was Tamil, Telugu. We launched Kannada and Malayalam this year. Again, great
Hmm.
traction, but going deep down into the Hindi heartland as well with Bhojpuri and Haryanvi.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed 8,000
Yeah.
at all. That's just fascinating. Are there any few, for example, states or regions or even cities which are sort of outliers in this? Like, for example, where do people listen to? Which city has the most number of music listeners
I
in
think
Spotify?
metros definitely top the charts, but what I can say is that we have very loyal users in the South. So they consume more, they consume the playlist for longer, but also sort of stick to the app. So definitely more loyalists there.
So their sessions are longer.
Yes.
Oh, excellent, excellent. That's great to know. Yeah, another thing that has also been a lot of conversations have happened is also on the area of podcasts, right? And of course, on this show, we've had a lot of people talk about audio, about podcasts in general, and how it is growing as a business, as an industry, as a cultural identity, so on and so forth. And I think everybody sort of gets that. During the lockdown, most definitely this number really shot up as far as India is concerned. But from your vantage point, how do you decode this podcasting trend, whether it is volume or the kind of shows that people are listening to?
So, like I mentioned, that the music consumption has gone up in this year. Actually, the podcast consumption has gone up even more. So, we've seen 100% growth in the overall consumption of podcasts on our app, which is great, right? And I think some of the things, and you would know this, Karthik, as well, some of the things that's fueling this is that I think there's a lot of familiarity being built, right, or being created for podcasts per se, right? And
Hmm.
it's not only brands like us. There are many other brands, right, that are talking about podcasts. There are a lot of creators who are doing that job for us as well. So, the users are now becoming familiar with what is this, sort of podcast streaming. Is this something new that I can try with? So there's a lot of nudge across the ecosystem for the user. So I think that definitely has helped the users try and dabble with this, the whole podcasting, if I may, right? Particularly on the app, a few things that I can point out, Karthik, is that while music is being consumed a little bit more by the younger audience, the Gen
Hmm.
Zs, what we see is that the podcasts are actually being consumed more by the 25 plus cohort.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, they are a little bit more serious podcast streamers. Again, I think a couple of reasons for that, right? I mean, one, of course, I think maybe they're able to discover more content because we see that they've, dabbled with more content across, and, they find their right genre then. And maybe also because they have some kind of screen fatigue, so they are resorting to audio now for
Hmm.
sort of as spending time. The other thing that we see on the app is that it's actually knowledge and learning, and then spirituality and devotional, which is also sort of a huge genre. If you actually see the top 5 podcasts that were consumed in India this year, they were really sort of in the land of knowledge and learning. There was, sex podcast with Lisa Mendes. There was, Jay Shetty. There was Ranveer show. So a lot of it was knowledge learning or then spirituality and devotional. Yeah, which then, sort of makes us believe that there's a high level of intent from the user to sort of spend time here and upskill,
Hmm.
when it comes to upskill and sort of, upgrade yourself with the podcasts.
I have a question here, which you might
Yeah.
or might not have an answer on this, but I'm just curious. Do you see a lot of loyalty for people and shows? Definitely, from what you're saying, it seems like there's a lot of loyalty for
Yes.
people
Yes.
and categories. Do people sort of
Yes.
come and listen to the same show multiple times and become loyal listeners of that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. So actually, I mean, intuitively, we would believe that, hey, a fiction show would bring in,
Hmm.
the users back. But actually, it is also, like I said, the knowledge and learning or the spirituality led shows that sort of bring the same audience back. So, whether it's, the Lisa Mendes show or it is the Ranveer show, they have a lot of loyalists that come back.
Hmm. Somewhere, and I was just telling this to someone in the Spotify office only, ironically, that I think about 10 years back, the conversation was whatever it is that you're looking for, there is an app for that. And I think today it's safe to say that whatever it is you're looking for, there's a podcast for that, right? I think there's
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
and a lot of that is probably also thanks to what you're doing with the ecosystem overall, not just on Spotify, but on Anchor and other places. I think more people are expressing themselves, through their shows, through podcasts. Of course, a few of them sort of succeed in doing this over a fairly long time, but there's a lot of expression happening, right, from that perspective. But I think somewhere, while, in my opinion, and this is not Spotify data, this is just my intuitive Karthik Nagarajan data, is that I feel there are somewhere around, 35, 40 million podcast listeners, active podcast listeners in this country, which
Yeah.
is significantly big. If I'm not
Yeah.
wrong, I think Twitter was around this number in 2015, 2016, which is not far away, right? Far
Yes.
away back. But we've not had that moment, right? Where, of course, the lockdown was that moment where I think it significantly grew more than 100%, in my opinion.
Hmm.
That moment where it probably goes by another 100%, it becomes closer to 100 million, sort of, in other words, the serial moment, for
Yeah.
the Indian podcasting industry. Yeah, I feel has not
Hmm.
happened, right? It's
Hmm.
happening in very, very small doses, but not happen in that one dose, right? What are your thoughts on that? When it happens, do you feel it'll probably be a fictional show, or will it be a celebrity, or will it be a steady sort of growth there? How do you feel
Hmm.
it'll happen?
So can't predict that, Karthik, but I think we are
Mm.
sort of, adopting a two-prong approach, right? One is that we are definitely investing a lot in building the category directly with the user. So educating on podcasting, right? And how and when to consume those podcasts. So creating that moments in a user's life. To give an example, we did a campaign last year which was called "When Your Hands Are Busy, Mind Is Free." Right. So I mean, they were, and this was actually rightly created during the pandemic, right? Because a lot of us were doing home chores. We were doing dishes, and we were putting the washing machine, and we were like doing home
Yeah.
chores where our hands are busy but our mind is free. We have to occupy that, happily. And I think it was really about then educating the user on the category, that what are those moments and when is it that you can consume a podcast. So a lot of that is happening. We recently also did another category building campaign where we spoke about how you can upskill and upgrade yourself just
Mm.
listening to podcast. It was a very cute campaign where he said kahan suna podcast pe suna, right? So
Huh.
you can
Huh.
you can sort of listen to anything. And you made that point some time back, right? We go and search about stuff on Google. Come and search about whatever you want to learn about, whatever you want to listen to. Anything from astrophysics to news to, gaming, whatever you want to listen to or whatever you want to upskill on, it's all there. So you can do that. So a lot of category building work is being done. But I think, having said that, the other lever really is leveraging creators,
Hmm.
right? And if I ask you that, name the top 5 YouTubers in the country, you probably can, right? I mean, my
Yeah.
top 5 might be different from your top 5, but there are
Yeah.
those top 5, top 10 YouTubers that, or the creators that exist. But if I ask you that, hey, tell me the top podcasters, I don't think we really have an answer. So
Yeah.
we all have to collectively build those podcasters. And I think that is an effort that Spotify India and globally, we are doing. We are building an ecosystem which is sort of, there for the creators. So nurturing them, identifying them, hand holding them, and then sort of, bringing them to the app and introducing them to the whole podcasting scenario. We also see this, that a lot of new users come with the creator. So
Hmm.
if I follow a YouTuber, right, and I like his or her content on YouTube, and tomorrow they have a podcast, I would sort of follow them on the podcast as well.
Yeah. No, in fact, as you were talking, what comes to my mind is that, you have a fan fest, a YouTube fan fest, where you go and meet, the streaming celebs in this country, right? You
Yeah.
have a Comic
Yeah.
Con, where you actually meet esports guys. Don't ask me why, but that's how it is. But today we don't have something like that for podcasters, and I think we probably have reached a stage where there are a lot of loyal following for
Yeah.
Indian podcasters, and to me, what YouTubers is to streamers is definitely Spotify to podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So looking forward to what you're doing there. In fact, on those lines, I really have that question, which is again on brand Spotify, right? Like, to me, as we go through rap, as we listen to the kind of stuff that you're doing with the creator economy, so on and so forth, it almost seems like, Spotify is what MTV was in the 90s, right? Where you get to discover new content, new artists, new ideas, which are revolutionary at the core of it. Right? Today, there's no other platform sort of to discover these things. How do you see the evolution of brand Spotify itself? What do you think it stands for today in the minds of Indians, so to
Hmm.
say?
See, I think from the time of launch, I think we've, at least in our heads, very clear, Karthik, that Spotify stands for music and music is for everyone.
Hmm.
Right, so in fact, even if you see the communication that we sort of put on air, it's really all playing to the category codes. We never talk about, hey, this is the reason why Spotify is different. It's not really about
Hmm.
why we are different or what feature we have, which is sort of only available on Spotify. It's really about what music does to you, how music can change your life. There is so much of music available here, which is not a differentiator. It's playing to the category codes, and it's really sort of playing up the role of music in your life. So
Hmm.
that is the intent, that we become synonymous with music, but at the same time it's not really about limiting that to a certain market or a certain demographic. It is about going literally to the billion users that are there. Yeah, so it's for everyone, and there is a huge role that music plays in everyone's lives. That's the belief that we operate with.
Great. Neha, we usually end the episode by asking our guest what he or she is watching, reading, or listening to. No pressure, because you're from Spotify. But what are you listening to these days?
So I can talk about my Wrapped a little bit, which sort of makes me
Yeah.
look like a schizophrenic a little bit. But so we typically see 5 genres on our Wrapped card, right? And this was a bit of a surprise to me. But I had rock, I had filmy, I had desi pop, and I had a new genre which was called mellow gold.
Wow.
I had to sort of look up what does mellow gold mean. So this mellow gold actually means soft rock from the 60s, 70s, 80s. So I had a lot of that as well.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that's true. I do listen to a lot of that as well.
Like Air
But
Supply types.
Air Supply, or it also could be Eagles. I mean, I wouldn't shy away from
Okay.
Phil Collins as well. So
Of course.
all of that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ah.
yeah, yeah. But I also have like desi pop, so a lot of excuses, and I have filmy, so a lot of Kesaria and Kabir Singh will also happen.
This AP Dillon phenomenon is just so amazing, because I have friends in Chennai who don't understand
Yeah,
a letter of Punjabi. I just
yeah,
love his music, and
yeah,
which is amazing. Of course, music is not restricted by language, but for an artist like that to sort of emerge, so quickly across the country is just amazing. No? What a
yeah.
story!
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think this is also happening now for South music. I mean, coming from a Punjabi family, I can tell you that a lot of Punjabi weddings are now playing Uantawa. They don't understand
Ah,
a word of what that means, but there is a lot of Uantawa that's happening on, the dances through the Punjabi weddings.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the song itself has like one wedding dance vibe to it.
Yeah.
But are you are you a podcast listener much? Do you listen to
Yeah, I do. I do. Of course.
any favorites? Anything you're listening to these days?
I actually listen to some business podcasts. I listen to, Business Wars. I also listen to some Varun Dugirala's podcasts on, taking a pause, because, that's something that we strongly believe in, that, you should sort of take a pause through the day sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much my genre.
I've changed his name on my phone to Swami Dugiralandan.
Yeah.
Dugiralanand. Yeah, because it's almost very, very spiritual listening to him these days. Big far cry from advertising is dead, which I love. Which I
Yeah.
love him
Yeah.
for
That's
doing that.
another
Yeah,
podcast I used to listen to. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And what are you watching these days? Are you bit of are you big on series streaming? Do you have time for it?
I finished The Crown last week,
You need a
and
gold medal just for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Why do you say that? I enjoyed it actually quite a bit.
No, I'm saying I'm not struggling with it because it's just never able to catch up to it as quickly so that I can be in the current
Hmm.
season. I'm always like 3, 4 seasons behind.
I actually I'm intending to start Khaki this weekend, so looking forward to that. I've heard good things about
Yeah,
that as well on Netflix.
I, I'll strongly recommend. The
Yeah.
good friends at Friday Filmworks have done a fantastic job
Hmm.
of making cop story for a change not that violent. Right? Something you can sit with your family and watch. And it's an intriguing true story as well. So
Yeah.
good stuff there. Yeah, yeah. Neha, thank you so much. I know time is hard to come by for you, but thanks for taking the time and talking to us about rap and all the cool stuff you guys are doing at Spotify.
Thanks, Karthik. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks.
Cheers. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik, that's Karthik with an H, on Twitter, and Filter_Koffee, that's coffee with a K, on Instagram.